Hey everyone, I'm TJ Atomica, and today we are going through part 2 of my mini series based on my book that will be getting released soon, Unreal Engine 5 Best Practices. It is currently available for pre-order on Amazon and the Pact website, so if you're interested, please check it out in the links below. After the first episode, I already had some fantastic feedback with regards to how I could present this series moving forward. And so I'm going to make some of those adjustments today. In this second episode, this is where I'm going to break down each of the chapters in my book and give you insights and practical tips. And to add, based on some of the feedback that I received, I'm actually going to do a tutorial at the end to give you an idea of some of the things that I discuss in the book, but in a video context. In the last episode, we looked at chapter 1, which was lighting with Lumen, and how mastering light can completely transform the scene. Today, in order to efficiently move forward with the videos and make them a bit more interesting, I'm actually going to be combining chapters 2, 3, and 4 into a slightly more condensed but larger episode. These chapters are all about building immersive environments, which is why I've put them together. Chapter 2 focuses specifically on atmosphere and mood. Chapter 3 dives a little bit into Unreal's built-in modeling tools. And then Chapter 4 explores environmental design theory, guiding the player through lighting, cinematography, contrast, set dressing, so on and so forth. And basically making it so that your world feels alive. After that, I'm then going to actually take you through a quick tutorial on how I would go about specifically lighting an environment in such a way that helps guide the player through a space using a combination of all of the principles that are being discussed, especially with regards to lighting and design and direct player direction, etc. So yeah, if you're interested specifically only in the tutorial, please skip to this point here. Otherwise, if you're interested in getting a little bit of an overview about what the other chapters are going to entail for chapters 2, 3, and 4, stick around. It's going to be a lot shorter than the last breakdown for chapter 1, but I think it'll be better in providing a context that's more appropriate for like a video format. And then I will follow that format forward with regards to the following chapters, and then some kind of tutorial to go afterwards that kind of represents a little bit of what I'm also conveying within the book in a much larger context as well. So up first, we have chapter 2. This was a real personal favorite for me, a lot like in the same way that I love chapter 1. Because it's about atmosphere and the secret sauce that kind of gives your environment life. In the same way that lighting creates structure, in many ways atmosphere is what can give it its soul. In this chapter, I break down how I use Unreal's fog systems, sky atmosphere, and post-process volumes to completely transform the feel of a scene. A simply boxy environment can go from sterile to cinematic, just with the right mix of fog, light direction, and subtle color grading. One of my favorite sections covers volumetric fog, plus light shafts. It's such a small thing, but when you see those shafts of light cutting through the fog, it instantly gives you environmental depth and drama. I'll be showing that a little bit in my tutorial to follow. I also cover post-processing and how you can use it to unify the look of a scene. Things like color grading, exposure control, bloom, and contrast. And subtle tweaks to the post-process volume that can make your world feel like a film set rather than just a tech demo. And then finally in chapter 2, I also look at a little bit of weather and layered effects in the form of like Niagara systems, and specifically looking at the way that we can achieve that not just ourselves, but also following different principles and potentially different marketplace assets that can help us get along the line. I talk about Ultra Dynamic Sky, for example, again, because it's just a phenomenal package, so on and so forth. In chapter 3, I talk about modeling inside Unreal, and this is a cool chapter. It's a little bit of a tangent or off to the side, but I thought it was really important because I wanted to cover a large range of different things that I do in Unreal, specifically for this book. And for years, like most of us, especially earlier on when I was across many different programs, I used to use like Maya or Blender to build assets, and then I imported them into Unreal. But now, with UE5's modeling mode, I can do a surprising amount of that stuff in Engine, and especially when I'm working with other artists who are specializing in, say, asset creation or character creation, they can send me their stuff, and then if I have to do edits, I don't have to send it back to them. I can do that stuff pretty comfortably in Unreal. In Unreal, you're able to block out spaces, sculpt, do Boolean operations, unwrap UVs, and even create modular assets without ever leaving the editor. This chapter walks through blocking out levels with primitives, so on and so forth, cubes, cylinders, planes, etc., and then refining them in real time using Unreal's polyedit tools. I won't be going through this as much in the tutorial because I already have a pre-established level and I have a reason for that, but it is still a really cool chapter and it's something that I really enjoy. There's a section that I really like, which is simply about, you know, the boxy layout and just the few things that you can do to create really solid grey box and assets. And, you know, this workflow is incredibly good for iteration speed. You know, you can light test gameplay and refine forms all at once without needing to jump between programs, and that for me I find is very good for my creative process. It's especially powerful for level designers and environment artists who are working together with no waiting for asset round trips and stuff like that. And then finally for this video, chapter 4, that's about designing engaging game environments. And this is very much the design brain of the bunch, and this is where my history as a game designer comes in. This chapter focuses less on individual tools and is a bit more of a theory masterclass and a way to think about environment design, but with that Unreal context over the top. Because great environments don't just look good, they guide players, tell stories, and support gameplay. I go through composition principles, framing, focal points, leading lines, and how these affect the way that players navigate the space. And then again, leading back into the things we'll have already discussed, talking about lighting and color contrast are a big part of that too. As you proceed through the book, you'll see how all of the different chapters have kind of led to a point that they're meant to elevate one another, or you're meant to take principles that have learned from previous chapters and apply them to the chapter that you're reading right now, so on and so forth. I also talk about environmental storytelling, using props, set dressing, decals, and lighting to suggest history and narrative. You can tell an entire story just through the arrangement of objects in a room. And for me as a player, when I see that in video games, that's some of my favorite storytelling stuff. I love examples of where you know something has happened without actually ever being told that something has happened. A really, really cool example of this that I can think of just off the top of my head is in the first Dying Light game. There's a bit where you're swimming around like a cliff face, and as you're swimming around, you can actually find someone that's like floating in the water. And if you get to the top of the cliff face, you can actually see their shoes there. And a picnic and all this other sort of stuff. And it's like, it's really cool because it kind of implies that they've jumped off the cliff, they've gone swimming or something, and they've accidentally died or killed themselves or something along those lines. But all of that happened before the zombie apocalypse broke out because they're still a normal human. And I just find that to be like a really subtle, small storytelling element, but it's just really cool as well. And then finally, chapter 4 looks a little bit at modularity and interactivity, building reusable kits and using blueprints for dynamic elements to make your worlds feel alive. Go into that a bit further in future chapters as well. And you know, one of my favorite examples from this chapter is how a simple doorway lit with like a warm shite of light can subconsciously pull a player across a space. You don't have any glowing objective markers or anything like that. It's just good design work, and that helps guide the player in that direction. So now that we've discussed all that, and I've shown you a quicker overview of each of those little chapters, again, if you're interested, please go pre-order the book. It comes out on January 9th next year. I'm really, really excited. I've worked super hard on it. But for now, I'm actually going to take you through a video tutorial of me actually going through the process of lighting an environment with the principles that I've kind of been discussing about how you can pull a player through the world. I'll go more in depth to it as we go into it, etc. But let's jump in. So for those who aren't familiar with Infinity Blade, Infinity Blade was an action role-playing game that was developed by Chair Entertainment and in collaboration with Epic Games, who I believe actually purchased Chair around the early 2010s. And it was released through the Apple App Store in 2010. It was the first iOS video game that was designed to run on Unreal Engine 3 or UDK at the time. And in the game, the unnamed player fights through a series of one-on-one battles in a derelict castle, etc. to fight bosses, so on and so forth. The game was developed by a pretty small team, from what I know, and it was basically intended to demonstrate the new iOS version of Unreal Engine. And basically it was, you know, for Epic to show its Unreal Engine 3 graphics engine, and it really needed like a killer game to show off. Epic had previously licensed the engine to numerous console and personal computer games, but they asked Chair specifically to develop this for their game to be able to show off as part of Apple's special event that was going on at the time. Infinity Blade was like super successful from what I understand. According to Wikipedia, it's one of the fastest growing apps in the history of iOS upon its release, and it made US 1.6 million in its first 4 days, and over 23 million US dollars by the end of 2011. So why am I actually talking about Infinity Blade? Well, after UE4 came out, Epic Games actually made all of their Infinity Blade, or at least a good amount of their Infinity Blade assets, free. They made it available for us to download and to experiment and to see. And once again, it was just like Epic just giving away a ton of their proprietary stuff so that you can figure out how to use their engine. And that is what we're going to be using today. As you can see here, I've got a bunch of the Infinity Blade assets that they've actually provided as part of the free assets that were available during that time. I actually believe as of this year they're no longer available, or they haven't been appropriately migrated over to Fab. So there's no way to currently download them. But if I figure out a way, I'll let you know. I'm sure there are people online through like Reddit or whatever that have put these files up online to be made available. But as of right now, because I've got access to them, it makes it really, really easy for me to add them to my project. And I want to add them to my project because being a older game and being built specifically for mobile back in 2010, despite being incredible graphics then, and in a lot of ways still holding up now, it's a really good baseline for me to show you that kind of like flatness that I'm talking about with regards to an environment, and then I'm going to light it my own way to help try and improve that. And when I say improve, I don't mean that like, any slight towards the developers that actually worked on this. I'm actually incredibly impressed with what they've managed to get working on a mobile phone, especially back then. I more mean that now that we have, more advanced technology and stuff, even with my pretty average computer, we should be able to do some things that allow it to make it a bit easier to know what's going on and where you need to go. As you could tell by that video before, Infinity Blade was very linear in its progression and the way that it presented itself. But in this context, we'll kind of be looking at it as if it was a bit more of like a uncharted open space that you could walk through. So how would we guide the player in that way? The other thing as well, so this is one of the scenes that I have from Infinity Blade, so one of the demo maps. I'm not sure exactly which game this come from. I think it might be 2 or 3. I don't think the first Infinity Blade was like this. That was just in a castle. But this has obviously been brought into Unreal 5, and it's not a perfect representation of what that scene would have looked like in-game either. Because we still have like the Lumen project settings on and stuff like that. So keep that in mind, but this is as the level is when I brought it in. So when I imported it into Unreal, this is what the level looked like. The only thing I've done is I've put a couple of blockers in a few places. So I've added these static meshes here. I've put a little, treasure or something in this room just to have something to look for, and then I think that's it. And then and I've changed where the actual player start is as well, and I've changed what the player is. So for the purposes of this, the first thing I'm going to do is a quick walkthrough of this space so that you can see how it looks, and then I'm going to go through lighting it myself. Relatively simply, relatively quickly. I'd spend a lot more time if this was an actual production setting. But for the purposes of this tutorial, it'll hopefully give you some cool ideas about what you can do. And I think realistically, I'm only gonna touch the lighting as well. I won't bother with like set dressing or anything for now. I purely want to be able to improve the scene with contrast, lighting, direction, a bit of volumetric, stuff like that. But I also want to keep it as optimized as I possibly can. So I might even do a little bit of lighting optimization at the end as well, just to show how that can kind of be improved. Since this was a mobile game, I should stay true to that and at least make it run as well as it possibly could on some of the mobile projects that I've worked on. So I'll use similar techniques for that as well, with a little bit of like fluffiness and a few more shadows that would be available and stuff, etc. So let's jump in. So here we are. So the first thing you'll notice is I'm obviously not the Infinity Blade character. I am Echo from the Lumen in the Land of Nanite character that they're using for all their presentations now, which is cool. So if we walk up through this scene, the first thing that's really important here, and the reason I'm showing this off, is these assets are, what, going on 15 years old now, at least. They're still really solid for what they are. Like, they hold up especially well. Like, these, like, wooden planks and stuff like that look really, really good. The thing that you start to notice, and the reason I want to show this is part of what I've been talking about, is how much lighting can change the way assets look. I wanted to deliberately use old assets as a way to kind of showcase exactly how that'd work. So again, this isn't bad by any measure. Again, there's obviously a little bit of like lumen going on here. I imagine their baked lighting that they would have done would have been a bit different. But again, this is just how I opened it. And I think it's a good starting point for us to make some edits and then go from there. Now, as you can see, this has already got some cool ideas. The idea of the spinning fans is an interactive item that pulls you in this direction, the light raking in, the smoke effects, stuff like that. And there's also great environment direction as well. But once you get to this point, you wouldn't, like, other than, you know, a player's instinct to explore, it wouldn't be unreasonable for you to not really know where you're going or what you're trying to do, even back in that room. As you turn around, you might figure that you can head in that direction. It looks open and stuff. But over there, you might have completely missed that that room was there. And this is the room where I've put the treasure chest that I want us to find and stuff like that. Now, again, very, very flat and very open. For the time, super impressive. And with, you know, modern lumen techniques and real-time lighting, I doubt that would have been how that was working on mobile. Who knows? But you get the idea. Basically, the problem is that it's all very, very bright, very, very flat, and lacking contrast. Cool. So with that done, let's jump in and let's actually start lighting this. And honestly, the way I'm going to get started is I'm just going to delete everything. So we've got atmospheric fog, so I'm going to yeet that. That didn't really appear to change anything. I'm going to look up lights like so. So we have some effects. That's fine. I'll keep them in. We have the light source, which is a directional light. So I'm going to delete that. That's connected to the sky sphere, but that's fine. I'm going to get rid of the light mass importance volume. I'm going to get rid of the skylight. Cool. I'm going to get rid of the volumetric light map density volume. And let's see what else is casting light out here. Just the actual sky sphere itself. So you can see that lumen definitely was on, which is why we were getting potentially all of that fill lighting that was actually happening. So it could be a skewed kind of result. Again, I don't want this to be assumed that this is representative of what it looked like when the final artists finished what they wanted to do for Infinity Blade. But it is just a cool example of going through that scene. It looked very flat, it was hard to direct, so how can we improve that? The first thing that I will always do is I'm always curious about getting my directional light back in. I'm just going to use this as kind of the center of my world, like so. I'm going to assume you've got some basic understanding of how to use Unreal. I'm not particularly interested in doing a how to use the editor sort of vibe, but if it is something that you might be interested in, then it's something that we can discuss at a later date. Now, we're getting some very, very strong lumen bounce lighting that is happening here, which is interesting, so I will want to investigate that. But we already run into this first kind of question that I need to ask, because if we've got the... actually, the other thing I might want to look at, is there a post-process in here? There is. Okay, so I'm going to delete that as well. So with that, the first thing I'm actually going to do, other than my directional light, is I'm going to get a post-process volume. I'm going to drag that into there. I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to set it to infinite extent. That basically makes sure that it affects the entire world. And then I don't particularly want to deal with light exposure right now. That's a tutorial for another day. So I'm just going to set everything to 1 and I'm going to set the exposure compensation to 0. And then that will guarantee that we've got like a nice flat lighting across the board, and we shouldn't be getting any like overly nasty blooming or eye adaptation that's actually occurring, so on and so forth. Going to brighten this up just a pinch. Oh, not that much, but who knows, 20 maybe. And we get the first kind of question we need to ask, which is, where do I want the directional light to be coming in? In order to still better fill this space, I'm also going to bring in a few other things. So I'm going to bring in a skylight, like so, which is fine. And then I'm going to set that to real-time capture. That's going to complain because it needs a sky atmosphere component and a volumetric cloud component to work, specifically in Unreal. Or it needs a material tag as its sky. So if you're using like a HDRI or something like that, you could do that. I'm going to do it the easy way for now. I'm just going to go sky. I'm going to drag in my sky atmosphere like so. You can see that the real-time lighting started to fill in that way, which is really cool. And then because this kind of gives off deserty vibes, I might just not bother with the clouds. I might just let it be a, yeah, sort of like just a clear, warm, sunny kind of day sort of thing, which is cool. So now we're starting to get some pretty nice bounce. We're still getting some nasty, sort of like lumen, like breakthrough here, and I assume that's just because of the way that the assets have been built. They're not really built for lumen and nanite in mind, but that's okay. There are things that we can do to help improve that. In order to avoid too much bounce lighting, and because again we were talking about this from the perspective of like a mobile game, I'm actually going to make the call to click on my post-process here, and I'm actually going to turn off Lumen as a global, what's screen space? I'm actually going to turn it off. I like screen space, we'll go with that, even though that's set to beta, as a global illumination solution that we have there, which helps darken everything down. We're still getting a few funky results, but we'll play with that later. The main part is like, how can we make it clear how light is directing throughout a space? And with that in mind, I'm just going to turn off lumen reflections as well. So within reality, we shouldn't be actually getting any like bounce lighting anymore. And for my little 1080, it appreciates that very, very much, which is good. If I go back to my directional light, I can test this. And if I blast my indirect lighting like way up, I'm not seeing any changes, which is good. So the other thing I want to do is I can now control everything directly within this space. So if I choose my skylight and then maybe, do I want it to be a real-time capture still? Again, in the interest of making it as optimized as possible, I might get rid of that and I might actually make it a specific cube map. And I'll just pick something that they've got by default in here. Desert outer HDRI could be pretty good considering we're using a sort of like a deserty sort of space, I guess. So if we do that, and then I bump up this sky intensity a bit, something like that, like that's starting to look pretty cool, right? The issue I have with it is it's still got that sort of blue sky. It's missing a little bit of that like desert yellow vibe that we had going, but that is something that we can fix over time. But for now, that's giving us a solid base, and then if I press play, already you can see here that we've got like a pretty nice depth. It's a little bit dark in the just sort of movement and stuff, but for now that's deliberate. I find it's easier to add light than it is to take away, so that's fine. What we lose though, and that's what we kind of need to decide here, is I really like how that light guides the player towards this space, but I kind of want the lighting, and these are the decisions I'm making. Yeah, I kind of want it on this side so that it's casting along this way. So I'm going to make the call. I'm going to choose the directional light here, and I'm going to rotate that around, and I'm going to put it from this direction. So that'll be similar to the direction that it was like casting in before, which I think is nice. It'll kind of help aim towards that door a little bit as well, like so. So yeah, I think that's kind of nice. And then the main thing, I actually want that to be a bit sharper, is I will want those to be coming in through there like so. So I'll set that to like -175, and then I'll increase the angle here so that we're getting those really nice lights casting across again. This was a decision that, oh, -35, sorry, that I think they did really, really well. So I want that to stay like that, which is cool. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate it just slightly that way. So 200 for that one. And then I'm going to pull it down just a little bit more. And the reason I'm doing that is I want these lights, as much as they're going to be pulling the player from this direction, I want the God rays to be pointing in that direction to guide them this way, for lack of a better term. We will still have indicators that help draw the player this way from a lighting perspective, but That's what I want, just so that it makes it as clear from a like a design standpoint as possible. And in order to do that, the next step that would probably help a little bit is to actually chuck in some fog. So we want our exponential height fog. I'm just going to put that there, like so. And it's set to 0, so that's there in the world, which is cool. Make sure that's actually working. And we want to actually turn on volumetric fog. Now, this is where I'm going a bit against the mobile approach here. Realistically, you'd have like fog cards or something like that to make this here. But in the interest of time, I'm just going to abuse the power and get something really nice happening. So we've got that there, which is cool. I actually don't mind the idea of it feeling like a bit of a dusty sort of space, but I don't want it to be too intense. So we'll do that, and then I want my fog into scattering to actually represent kind of what you'd be seeing out in the world as well. This is better for like at a distance. So if I set that back to dark, you'll see how that kind of does that over there. But I actually want it to be bright, and I'm just going to set it to yellow so that the light that's coming in through the sun just has like that pinch of yellowness to it. Like so. And then I'm going to bring the fall off just down a bit. So we still get that really... Basically what I'm doing is lowering the fog in the sky. So we still get that like really nice sort of like blue that I want you to be able to see. And then ideally you can still see the sun, which you can. But we're just getting that bit of like hazy fog that's sitting on the ground now, which looks really cool. And it means that we're still getting this effect as well, which is awesome. I might even increase the fog density just a bit more now that we've actually put that space. We've got that in there as that space now. Cool. So that's really awesome. What would be next? Next, I'm actually going to click on the directional light again. I'm actually going to increase the volumetric scattering intensity that it provides. And the reason I want to do that is I want it to actually be like casting more intense light into this space, like so, which is cool. Okay, sweet. The other thing, I might actually just max that out like so. I also need to check, so that's got cast shadows on. This is, we're definitely going into just visual quality at this point, less so than performance quality. Oh yeah, so we've got cast volumetric shadows on, so that's why we're getting those nice cast shadows, which is awesome. But if I look at it from this direction, do you see how it would be like pretty clearly pointing the player in this direction now? Even just with these like two lights, that helps a lot. What have we got over here? What are you? Ah, reflection captures. We don't want those in the scene. I'm going to get rid of those. Yeah, okay, that was the only one. That's fine. Cool. So we've done that, and that's awesome. But I still want, like, some light coming through here. And this is when you can kind of, like, rely on fake lighting to kind of bloom stuff out a bit and just give an interesting effect. Okay, so either deleting that reflection cube completely destroyed my computer, or it's just overheated because it's crap and I had my camera running as well. So we're going to complete the rest of this tutorial without my face. Lucky you. But yeah, everything crashed. I hadn't saved like an idiot. Even, 15 years into this job, I still don't save. So I've had to quickly rebuild everything. But we're back here. I've chucked it all in a lighting folder and we're ready to proceed. So yeah, I want to start building out things, like I said, and making it, easier to sort of know where you're coming from and stuff like that, and what exactly is going on. So the first thing that's happened, if we play through again, just to quickly see where we are. So this is where we got up to before it crashed. So far, we've literally just got the skylight in there. We've got a little bit of funkiness happening, but that's all right. And we've worked on getting the volumetric fog to sort of cast in the direction of what we want to see. So we know that we want to pull in that direction, which is cool. What I'm also going to do is quickly reset that. So now we get nice volumetrics. There we go. So those are looking good, which is excellent. Cool. And then we've got this over here. Now, I've seen this happen a lot in games where they will deliberately abuse light direction in order to help convey an idea, even if it doesn't make sense, right? So even though we know that the sun direction is coming from this angle, right? We know it's coming from over there. It is not unreasonable for us to get the lights that are here and just cast them into this space, right? And even here, we can see how we're doing a little bit of a trick here where they're using a plane to help sort of break up the shadowing within this space. So what I might actually do, just to help with that, is I might grab this plane that we have here, and I'm just gonna like move it across so that we can block that directional light that's coming through there. So I'm going to rotate that up. See how that blocks that there? And I'm just going to use that as like a fake shadow caster. Put that there. So I want to make sure that I'm still getting light coming through here, which it is, but I wanted to stop light coming through that way, which is good. And now what I'm going to do in order to help aim in that direction is I'm going to set up some fake directional lights, or basically, you know, spotlights, to help guide the player in that direction. Now, we don't necessarily need one there, but I will probably add one just for dramatic effect as well. So I put that there. I'm going to increase the radius of that, blast that up quite a bit. And I know that I'm going to have that set to use inverse square fall off, because I don't need it to be like a lamp or like a light in the world. I just need it to guarantee cast the same value of light that I need across the entire scene, sort of thing. And the reason I'm using this instead of a rect light is spotlights are just cheaper. Point lights are like 16 times more expensive, and a rect light is basically just a glorified point light. Spotlights are nice and cheap in comparison, so we can get away with more, even though we're going to be keeping shadow casting on for all of these. And now I'm going to increase that light there, like so, which is cool. I'll remind you again, we're not using lumen at all. This is no bounce lighting. This is just the way that it's like filling up the fog and stuff like that, which is cool. But as you can see, it's kind of doing it in a weird cast sort of way, and I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on... where is it? Volumetric shadows. Again, a bit expensive, but that's fine. The thing is, and the thing I've noticed, at least with the way that I've seen how like players play games sometimes, is like 9 times out of 10, they don't really notice this stuff. And if they do, it's not enough to like completely break immersion. As long as things look good and it's clear like what's going on, that's the important part. That I find most people find valuable. But if we do that there, and then I'll probably just rotate that. Again, this is a little bit chaotic. Like I said, I'd work with an art director and stuff a bit more if I was doing this in a like production setting. But for the purposes of this, I just want it to be really clear, like where I'm trying to like guide the player and stuff like that. I think that's looking pretty cool. I might up the intensity on that just a pinch. I don't know, like 200, something like that. It's looking pretty good. So that's cool. I'm going to move that to lighting so that I know what's going on. So that's there, which is cool. And then I might grab that exact same one and I will move it to world transform. And I'm just going to drag that across there. And what's cool about this one is I can still angle this one in a slightly interesting way. But what I want to do is I actually want to move it a bit more to the center here. Because what I'd like is if I can get that to kind of aim down just a pinch. See how that's like aiming down that way? Yeah, cool, 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 cool. I'll rotate that like so. Awesome. And then, yeah, so then we get out to here, and then we're starting to get like those rays that are casting into this place, which is like really, really cool. What I might even do for this one is I might actually tighten up its about a cone angle, so I really have it like shooting down directly. No room for not knowing where it's sort of casting, and then that's where the light is actually casting. So if I actually, what I might do even more, so this is just another thing, in order to like tighten that shadow angle, I'm actually going to increase its range to like 8,000, give or take. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift it like right up, like so. And then I'm going to tighten that even more so that it's like really shooting like a direct light straight into that hole. Because what I want it to do is I want it to actually cast straight down. It's getting there. I'll go there, rotate over. And then ideally, oh, it's pretty close. And then I'll bring it over this way. Oh. So that way a little bit more. Yeah, I just want it kind of casting into that hole. I can increase that just a bit, so let's make it hard to figure out what's going on. So if I put that there like so. Yeah, cool. So now we've got that. We've got our shadow there. So if I save, because I don't want to crash again, we now start with a really cool light that's casting into the world, which is awesome. So that just creates that sense of depth straight away. And then as we move out into the space, as we move up, you can see that we're automatically being guided by light in this direction. Yeah. Now, I'll fix that in a moment, the virtual shadow map problem that's coming up. But yeah, we're automatically being guided in this direction. Now, thankfully, the level design means that for the most part, it's taking you where you need to go. But we're very clearly indicating to the player that this is the direction that we want them to head in, right? And we've kept these areas kind of dark because if they want to explore there, they can. There might be secrets, but it's not inherently important to our ability to navigate. So again, I think that's working pretty well. You come out of this space, you walk up, and very clearly that's like directing the player that way. And it doesn't even really need to be like, you know, it's pretty subtle. It's not very realistic, but it works, right? And it's clearly defining them in that direction. Yeah, so I think it's just like, yeah, it's working really well. But the other thing we can kind of do as well is if I don't want it to be obvious that there's no light source there, one of my favorite kind of cheap tricks that you can do is if we grab one of these planes, right, like so, and I'm going to make this it's the same on both sides, that's fine, go like that, I'm going to lift that up, but I'm going to make it non-shadow casting, so that the light will go directly through it, which is what's happening, right? You see how that's now become like really dark? I'll just browse to where this is. Let's have a look at what they're doing with this material. Okay, cool. So that's pretty straightforward. That's fine. I'm just going to duplicate it. This is an efficient way to do it, but that's fine. And I'm just going to call it light below, like so. We'll open up that material. Beautiful. We'll type in, so we've got the color of it there, which is cool. I don't need roughness, so I'm going to change that name to just power for the emissive power. We're going to drag out of color. We're going to put in a multiplier. We're going to drag that power into there, and we're going to put that directly into emissive color. And then we're going to set the shading model to be unlit. And then because it's black, it's not going to do anything. And then we're going to set that bad boy to white, like so. Apply. Save. We'll drag that over here, like so. I'm going to apply that to there. And now we have what appears to just be like a casting light like that, but then with a combination of that, and then if we increase the power to say 5, 10, 20. You see how it starts, like we've now got like a blooming that's happening? And again, not lumen, we're just blooming a flat plane. Yeah, as you see, that's just a plane there. But it's now starting to look like the effect of eye adaptation, where it's like so much brighter outside of the space that it feels like there's just light filling in the world. So again, while it's not necessarily realistic, it's an easy way to sort of cheat it, and I see it done in games all the time, where they will just put like a plane there or something like that to indicate that there's light in the world, when what you're really looking at isn't like a very blooming expanse or sky or anything like that. You're actually just looking at a flat white plane that's kind of glowing, right? So that's cool. So if we chuck that there like so, I kind of want to start looking at the color a little bit already, but I'll resist for now. But yeah, we'll play with that in a sec. I'm just going to save that. We'll close that, and that's fine. And we now have our white plane, which is cool. Now, what's cool about that is I actually think that is more interesting than what I'm seeing out there as well. So I'm actually going to do the exact same thing for this spot here. And what's cool is like these you can just have in like front of windows and stuff, but you don't actually need it to be like everywhere. Like it wouldn't make sense to have it here. You do just want that to be the sky, right? But as long as things are mostly hidden well enough, then it should be fine. And you can already see, so if I put those side by side, right? I don't know, to me, that looks more like it's a bright outdoor environment than what I'm getting from this one here, which looks a bit dull, right? So if I move that across like so, and I move that in a bit closer so that it covers both, right? Cool, we're getting that effect, which is awesome. And then if we go to the post-process, cool, and then let's, what am I looking for? Bloom. I'm definitely, as much as I'd want to turn that on, I'm not going to, but I am going to increase the bloom intensity. So if I up that to like, I don't know, 2.2, give or take, we're now getting a really nice blooming effect. Everything else looks cool. Like if I'm just running through the world now, full screen. So that's still looking cool, but then when I look up, I've got this really nice blooming effect that's coming through the ceiling, like so. And then over there, I've got very clear glowing that's outside that's drawing me in that direction as well. Now, we can push all of this further if we're using eye adaptation and stuff, but again, that might be something for a later video. But yeah, you get the idea, which is really cool. So got that. Volumetrics are looking kind of interesting and stuff like that. Now, because we haven't got lumen, we are missing something a little bit here, and this is where I would like to do fake lighting, and I actually talk about this a little bit in my chapter as well, which is the effect of like just basically fake bounce lighting without it actually being real. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a point light into this space, like so. I'm going to set it to be inverse squared fall off off. And then I'm going to increase it to fill in this space a bit. And what I kind of am trying to imply here is that if I put that kind of in the center of where the impact is occurring, like so, I'm also going to turn off the specular scale so that we don't get like a shininess, because I don't want a shininess from bounce lighting. So I put that there like so. Close that. I'm going to move, because this is good folder management, because we want that to be easy to manage. So I'm going to put that there like so. And then if I click on that and I turn that on and off, do you see how that's giving a sense of like light bouncing now? And I think that looks like really, really cool. It might be a bit too much, to be fair. If we set that to like 2000 and I set that to like 4, all right. But the important thing here is I want to turn off shadow casting, because we just don't really need it, because it shouldn't be so intense that it's clearly not casting shadow, right? So I'm going to set that to like a 4 or so. And the other thing I've just noticed is it is affecting volumetric scattering, which I don't want it to do. I just want it to kind of fill in the space a bit. And now that I've seen that, I might actually increase the intensity somewhat. But I just want it to give the effect that the light that's coming through here is bouncing off this space, like so, and it's giving just that pinch of fill light. And then if I do that, do you see how that's like, it just gives it a little bit of a sense of depth to it and clarity, which is like really nice. It's still a bit intense. I might just go, what am I thinking? 5, that should be okay. So we'll do that. But what I want to do here is I then want to do the exact same thing here to this part of the room as well, right? So I know this is where the key bounce is occurring. Now, again, realism isn't what's important as much as like it has to feel somewhat grounded. So there's a fine line between it not feeling grounded anymore. But do you see how that's like filled in that light there a little bit? Now, I actually feel like it takes away from some of the depth here just a pinch. So I'm going to set that to like 2 or 3. But it still keeps the depth everywhere else that we're looking, right? And it feels like the light coming through here is bouncing off of that area and then into that space there. So if I turn that on and off, you can see how that's filling in that area. Some might argue that that's actually destroying a bit of the contrast there. I could see that. I might drop that down to like 1500. Again, this is something you do with like with a director or your own insights as well to kind of figure it out. But what I like about that is that actually fixes that kind of horrible shadowing that we've got there a little bit by creating like a fake bounce, which is really, really cool. Awesome. Okay, so if we save that, this is heading in a pretty good direction. I don't want this tutorial to go for too long, so I'm just going to go through the basics and get something else happening. But the other thing that I want, so this is a situation where, we do have an actual crack in the wall, so that's kind of nice. So we can do the same thing there, which is cool. But the main thing I want to do is I want to show how we can kind of like guide the player, I guess, towards this room, if this makes sense. And I guess we could do that if we've got like candles or something. I don't even know if I've got some candles currently. I do. Okay, cool. I'm going to use, what is this? What is this random asset that I've got? That is just a random candle. You know what? Done. We're going to use that as our candle that we use to guide the player. All right. So I'm going to browse to that asset in the interest of speed. Showing folder view, sorry. Okay, cool. So this is a ton of the stuff that comes from this is part of the Infinity Blade packs, so that makes life a lot easier, which is cool. So what I'll do is here in my Atmos thing, I will save what I'm currently doing, because now I'm scared of crashing at any moment. I'll create a blueprint class, actor, and I'm just going to call it BP underscore candle, like so. Awesome. And then I'm going to go to here. I'm going to grab that. Oh, trying to work off one screen. It feels a bit odd, but that's fine. Come over here. Yeah, okay, cool. So we'll drag that into there like so. Happy days. All right, that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to attach to that a point light. Now, I'm deliberately going to make this a non-shadow caster. Again, I'm trying to be somewhat efficient with the way that I'm doing this. It's not like, obviously it's not great because I'm using like volumetrics and stuff, but just as an idea. And now I'm just going to slap that blueprint I've made in the middle here so I've got an idea of how that's casting light. And I actually think that's already doing a pretty awesome job. It's filling in that space, so on and so forth. But I actually want it to be a little bit more obvious. This is where I think I saw that there was like a fire effect or something. Let's type in candle again. Because if I've actually got a like little flame, I've got like little textures, that's fine. Candle flame. Hang on, I've got that there. It's a cascade, it's old school, but that's fine. I can work with that. So if we attach that there, whoops, and grab that flame and we put that there. Again, I don't mind if it's a little bit over the top. It's all about just drawing the player clearly towards what we want them to look at. So if I put that there, cool. I mean, that's looking pretty awesome. It's a bit dull for my liking. It'd be good if I can go into the material, global texture parameters. So it's not got any... It does have... the actual particle colors determining its intensity. Okay, that's fine. So I won't save that. I won't save that. I will go into the particle, and then I will look for its color over life. I believe that's where it's probably doing it. Alpha constant over life. Points. What am I looking at here? Okay, so that's as bright as it gets. Trying to remember everything I learned about cascade particles once upon a time. Okay, don't know if that's done what I think it's meant to be doing. No? What am I looking at here? That's the out value. If I just set that to huge. There we go. So that's bright. Yeah, cool. So you see how it's like hitting that bloom effect and stuff? I think that looks really awesome now. Cool. I can't remember a lot about how Cascade works since Niagara came out, but there you go. Click on stuff until you figure it out, and then happy days. So yeah, we've got the color over life. I've set that to some absurd value. What I set that to? 100? That's fine for me. And then I will save all, and I will close all of those. Cool. Don't need you anymore, but I do need the point light to match the color. Now, there's a few different ways to do it. I generally, when I'm dealing with like heat, like just working with temperature. So if I just set that down to the lowest value, boom. You've got this beautiful looking candle. It's not casting shadows, but I genuinely don't think that really matters. And then what's awesome about that is we can then, with this one asset, start creating very clear guides that can help the player move through the space, all right? So now that we've got this first one set up, I'm just going to have that, like, I want to make it interesting, I guess, and make sense a little bit. So if I bring this over here, I'll drag that down to there, duplicate another one. I do that by just holding Alt and then clicking drag across. Awesome. Cool. We can have another one kind of sitting here. Oh, where am I going? Blueprint. So I can have one there, which looks nice. Again, being non-shadow casters, they're like generally a bit cheaper. And this is where you can start building a little bit of storytelling. So I know that I've got my candle here, and like, I don't know, during construction of this pike, this one was knocked over. Devastating. Cool. So yeah, so that's like knocked over. Sweet. All right, but we still got that one, which makes it really clear. And yeah, maybe there's, I don't know, maybe it's like a cultist mix of like with ancient tech sort of vibe that's going on. But we can use these to create a very clear path to salvation, which is cool. So if we sit that one there, like so, we're now guiding the player, which is awesome. You know what? I might sit that one just over there, because so it's not in the player space, because I could imagine them jumping and cutting across there, so I want to keep that out of the way. They get dragged in this direction, which is cool. I think it would make sense to have these over here. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to put them there. So now we've got like that. It's got the, what's the word? Symmetry. It's got symmetry going on, which is cool. That's all looking awesome. And then I want my candle here and my candle here at the door as well, right? Which looks cool. But I also want there to be a clear way that you can see over here that there might be something that you can do here as well. Now, the simple solution is obviously just put a candle here, and then I put a candle on each side of these collectible items, like so. And then, you know, that's a pretty easy way to do it. There are other solutions as well that could be like a lot nicer than this, but I don't want this tutorial to go for too long. The point is it's meant to clearly indicate where you potentially want to go in the world. And I think that is now achieving that. So let's, we've saved all, so let's play again. I'm here, cool. I've got my cool space to walk around, and I've got some clearly defined places to go. Bright things, we love bright things as humans, and it's a really easy way for us to guide the player through a space. But you can see that I'm still using contrast to clearly define where you might want to go, right? So if I head over here, cool, I'll just run to pick up the pace. Even then, this is a little bit of level design as well. Can you see how the secret passageway wasn't as clear from the start? So that one that's over there wasn't as clear as this one over here is, because this is where all of the cables are leading. That's where the light direction is pointing you, right? But we've still made it clear enough that by the time the player gets to here, they might be like, oh, cool, that's something for me to check out. And then they can see in the background potentially what the goal is, which could be like a chest or something, right? Whereas if they look that way, they're like, oh, that path keeps going and it's heading outside. So we're like instinctively telling the player that, hey, go this way, you might find a secret or something cool, right? But it's not the beaten track. And if you're anything like me as a player, you're like exploring everything. And I hate when I go down a path and then I realize I've missed stuff because I didn't realize that it was like the main path or whatever. Now, again, this isn't perfect. You can see it's got non-shadow casting lights and stuff. But for the most part, it is very easy to guide, so on and so forth, which is really, really cool. And then you come out here and boom, you've escaped. Congratulations, happy days. So if we go back into the scene, oh, ignore that. So if we go back into the scene, there's one more thing that I kind of want to play with a little bit. And that's the fact that this is meant to feel like a bit of a deserty scene. And right now it feels just a pinch, I guess cold would be the answer. I want it to feel a bit warmer. And while I could do that through the lighting, I always like doing a little bit through the post-process, at least a pinch. So let's go to the post-process. We'll go here. We've got our bloom set up. We've got our exposure set up. Cool. Now, temperature makes sense. Go to here. I'm going to switch it from white balance to color temperature, and I'm going to drag that to be just a pinch warmer. And already that actually feels like a sunny day, right? It's crazy what you can do with just like dragging like a few sliders and stuff like that. So I've dropped that. So if I turn that on and off, right? Let's hang on, let me make that screen a bit bigger. So if I turn that temp on and off, look at the difference that makes to how that looks visually, right? And then over here, it completely changes the scene, in my opinion. Now, maybe you want it to be cooler. That's fine. That's your choice. That's your prerogative, etc. But yeah, I think that's like really cool. And being a sucker for pinks, I just think it looks really nice. I'm actually going to put a pinch of like minus 0.2. Just a pinch. Oh, minus 0.2. Sorry. Just going to put a pinch of pink in there. And I feel like that like really helps set the scene a bit as well, which is cool. So that's awesome. And then I might just for fun, I'll go in here. I'll just do a little bit of work on the contrast and the saturation like so. So if I set that to 1.1, 1.1, sorry, not comma 1. So if I turn that on and off, just a pinch, yep, that's nice. And then the contrast, I might set that to like 1.05. And that'll just help darken those darks a bit as well. Yeah, nice. Could even go 1.1 potentially, just to show it working. And then if you head over in this direction as well, so on and so forth. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty nice. And then just one, so if we save that again, cool. And then one quick final playthrough. Awesome. Run up through. And there you go. Cool. So yeah, that's a very, very quick, rough breakdown. I mean, like, you know, I've been doing this for like, what, 30 minutes, give or take, maybe? And, you know, it's super rushed and there's not a lot of thought put into it, but already I think it makes it a lot more clear where you need to go and why, thanks to some simple, like, color contrast, some volumetrics, and some lighting design as well, and stuff like that. So, yeah, just to confirm again, I'll do a sort of side-by-side walkthrough of the scenes. So this is what the scene looked like beforehand, as it was, just as it came into Unreal, and this is what the scene looks like now. And again, I think, like, considering these assets are going on 15 years old, I think it just proves that even now, some solid lighting and some, you know, solid atmospherics and stuff can really sell the idea of a scene in, like, a really interesting way. So, yeah, I hope this tutorial has been fun. I hope you've learned something interesting from it. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you're kind of interested in. Do you like the way I'm doing tutorials or how I've done this tutorial? Is there things you would change? Is there stuff you'd like me to explore? Etc, etc. And if there's any other kind of setups you'd like me to tackle. Do you want it to be a bit more beginner friendly? Is it too beginner friendly? Do you want more advanced topics to be discussed? So on and so forth. And I'll continue to adjust and make improvements and refinements as we move forward. But for now, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.